Good afternoon, Facebook community. Christopher Ricker here, New York City Parks environmental educator from the Greenbelt, and I want to welcome you all to another Greenbelt at Home virtual program. Today we will be running our Scenic Perspectives Hike, and I'm just going to give it another couple seconds to see who else might be joining us virtually. But if you are returning to yet another virtual program here in the Greenbelt, welcome back. If you are new to our virtual programs, or you're an individual that comes in person to hike on our 35 miles of trails within our 2,800 acres of Greenbelt Parkland, we want to welcome you yet again for joining us for this awesome experience. So today we are going to be hiking around the 40 acres of woodland known as Deere Park. And Deere Park again is part of the overall 2,800 acres of Greenbelt that cover Mid-Island. So I'm just going to flip this camera around so you can see this steep, beautiful woodland landscape. And again, this is 40 acres known as Deere Park, which, if the name deer sounds familiar, some of you might be thinking of D-E-E-R, which is the ungulate or the mammal, but Deere Park is actually spelled D-E-E-R-E. And if that spelling looks familiar, it's because this park was named after the farm equipment manufacturer John Deere, who was actually born in Rutland, Vermont, which was only about a 20-minute drive from where I went to college. And John Deere was educated in Vermont, and he was a blacksmith apprentice who actually designed the first self-scourging plow. So because of that invention, John Deere tractors, supplies, and their manufacturing plant became known around the country, and they're actually world-renowned as well. The property here was named after him by Parks Commissioner Stern in the mid-1990s. And Charles Deere, who was John Deere's son and who took over John Deere tractor supplies, was the first recorded deer to own this property. And then later on, this property was acquired by the Parks Department. And again, it is a beautiful landscape. And as we're hiking along, we're looking for our guide and other Greenbelt environmental educator. There she is.
Hi everyone, hi Chris.
Hi Angel.
Angel Ehlers here. I was just listening to your story about John Deere and thinking about how lots of people may be confused about the name of this park, and it was not named for deer, the mammal. However, as you were saying that, I was looking down at the patch of skunk cabbage down here, which is in a wetter area, and there are deer tracks that go right through the sandier parts there. So although the white-tailed deer is not the namesake for this park, there's lots and lots of white-tailed deer here, and we'll see lots of evidence of them and other animals here. And we'll talk a lot about where this park sits on the island, because we're sandwiched in kind of a little bubble between lots of different areas of residential parts of the island, as well as you may be able to hear in the background, aside from the beautiful bird sounds, the sounds of the highway. And then as we approach higher up the hill, we'll start to see the back of Victory School, so that everybody has a little bit of a context of where we are. So we are along the Blue Trail, and where we end this virtual hike will actually be the very beginning of the Blue Trail, where you would pick it up if you were driving I always like to talk about how to access these parks so that people know exactly how to get here. And I love it when parks are really easy to get to. This is not one of them, unless you have a car or some sort of individual way of traveling on your own. Like a bike would be great, but if you were taking the bus, the closest bus stop is actually about a 25-minute walk away. It's at Victory Blvd and Clove Road. If you were to take the 61, the 62, or the 42, you could walk here from there. It is a very nice walk. Or you could connect here from other parts of the Blue Trail. And the Blue Trail is the Greenbelt's longest trail at over 12 miles in one direction. So there's lots of opportunities to jump on the trail from different access points throughout.
So Deborah Beth, one of our regular patrons, said hi folks, and that she's going to be doing lots of hill training up in this section of the Greenbelt this year.
Well, Deborah Beth knows all about the Greenbelt, and she knows that this is an exceptional place to do hill training. And as we're kind of panning around, you'll see very extreme changes in topography. And on this side, on the right side up here, you can start to really see how the elevation changes to the very top there. So if we were to have gone the other way, instead of walking this way toward the treaty school, we would be heading deeper into the Greenbelt, and Deere Park actually ends at where Toad Hill Road and Ocean Terrace kind of make that intersection. And that point is one of the highest points on the whole eastern seaboard, south of Maine. And it's where during the Revolutionary War, people would actually look out from that position to see if there were any dangers on the horizon. So that's exactly how high this is, and it's pretty amazing.
It almost looks like it was carved out.
Almost. It certainly was, yeah. These are, we talk about deer tracks and evidence of different animals, but other parts of nature also make their imprint on the land, including, and we've talked about this time and time again, but including glaciers. So the Wisconsin Glacier covered all of the, oh, beautiful blue jay, covered all of this whole northern part of the United States up through Canada, and it actually stopped right at the southernmost point of Staten Island, which is so amazing. I love that fact. What a cool place for it to stop. But then as the glacier receded 10 to 12,000 years ago, which means that global temperatures were warming and the glaciers receding up north, they had huge boulders, and you can see around here there are large boulders speckled around Deere Park and through other parts of the Greenbelt. The boulders and the ice itself actually were carving their way through the landscape, and that is what we have today. So we have deep ravines here in Deere Park, and like Deborah Beth said, it's excellent for exercise, but definitely be aware when you're coming out here that it is not an easy hike. It's moderate, but it's beautiful and so well worth the trip.
And that's great to mention, because with the 35 miles of trail here in the Greenbelt, we really have different trails for different people. So certain trails are a little bit more strenuous, steeper terrain for those adventure-seeking individuals who want to maybe push the limits of their physical, mental, spiritual self in order to grow as an individual. Other folks just want to come out and enjoy a leisurely walk. And because of all of this parkland which is open to all of us and accessible for all of us, we can get a little piece of the adventure each of us are seeking.
So this lookout vantage point is different from when we were looking on this side at the really high elevation of Toad Hill. We are staring straight into society here. We see the fields of Petriti School, we see the highway, and then beyond that we can see the other hills of Staten Island. And then there are even open spots in hidden parts of this park where you can actually see views of the Manhattan skyline and the Verrazano Bridge as well. And some people may be turned off from wanting to come to a park that has the audible sounds of society, like as you're walking on the trails, because people like to escape that when they're in nature. But for me, as a almost lifelong Staten Islander, it's important for me to remember that humans are a part of nature as well. We make our impact, and we can continue to visit these spaces and learn about them and advocate for their protection and their survival. And that's why it's even more important for me to keep coming to places like this, because just because I hear that there's a building being built over there doesn't mean that there aren't protected species of birds that make their home here, or very rare bat species that just love it here. So it's really great for us to come and have a really responsible impact on this area.
Nice. Heather DeMeo says hello, and she's excited to join us.
Hi Heather, how you doing?
And then Susan Marie was asking about the trailhead, which you mentioned earlier. We're making our way there.
Absolutely. Susan, we're gonna end this hike at the trailhead. We're probably about 10 minutes away from it now because we're walking pretty nice and slow, because like we've said, the hills are pretty extreme, so we're trying to take our time. But the trailhead, it's actually interesting. When I've looked at older Greenbelt maps, as old as only like 8 years ago, the Blue Trail didn't end here or start here, whichever way you're looking at it. It actually continued through the streets of, I guess this is Sunnyside, this neighborhood, and through to Clove Lakes Park. And even today, even though that trail isn't officially there anymore, there are still some old light blue trail markers. So there's a little bit of unknown history, to me at least, of this area.
So for those of you who are just joining us, because I just saw a surge of new folks come on, welcome to our Greenbelt at Home virtual program, Scenic Perspectives with Angel and Chris. That's Angel right there. And today we are at Deere Park, which is 40 acres of parkland, which is a part of the overall 2,800 acres of Greenbelt that span across the island, creating recreational leisure opportunities for people, along with conserving Staten Island's vital wildlife, ecosystems, and gorgeous habitat.
You can hear some kids having fun off in the distance. I guess at school, it's a school day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something that I notice when I look around this area is that some of the trees are actually really old, right? Some parts of Staten Island don't have very old trees. There have been several fires throughout time and different times when people have gone in and clear cut lots of areas, making sure that all future trees would then be about the same age. But there are some really beautiful trees here. This is mostly an oak forest with different beeches and sassafras trees and maple trees, all scattered together. And then what I love so much that I notice in this park a lot, if you look over to this side, you see this diagonal tree, right? So a storm may come in and uproot a tree that was sick and maybe its roots weren't very strong, or maybe it was just a really, maybe it was extra wet that day and maybe the roots didn't have a really good hold, or the tree was kind of sickly anyway, and they fall over or they die in some way. But these trees don't just disappear. So they still remain here on the landscape, and they provide all kinds of new opportunities for the plants and the animals that have been kind of waiting for that space. So what happens when one tree falls is it creates a big hole in the canopy. And that hole now allows so much sunlight to come through and reach the ground. So all of those little seedlings that never would have had a chance because they can't compete with a 150-year-old oak tree for resources now has a chance. And then the competition can really start back up again. And I think that's really cool. And I see that a lot here at Deere Park. And I'm sure it has something to do with the elevation and with the water running through. I don't know exactly why that would happen more here, but I'm gonna look more into it because it's really interesting.
That's awesome, Angel. And that reminds me of one of my favorite books. It's an illustrated book called Reading the Forested Landscape. And I really love it because besides the natural history descriptions, there are beautifully hand-drawn illustrations that talk about things like you're looking at a scene, you see that the majority of the tree species are oak. You see that some of the red maple trees might have 4 or 5 trunks growing out of them. You see that there's a lot of scarring at the base of large old growth trees. Or you notice that there's abundance of moss. And then each page in the book actually explains how to read the picture, just like Angel is doing naturally. So she might not have that book in front of her, but she's looking around at different signs of different markings of different things she might be seeing on trees. And that's telling a story of the history of the landscape around her.
I don't have the book in front of me, but I do have it at home because I got it for my husband for Christmas. It's really awesome. But as you were saying that, I'm looking and I'm like, oh wow, look at these 3 sweet gums. These little sweet gum trees. Oh, that one's also a sweet gum. But it's very interesting. Why would those 3 be right there? What happened at that point, maybe 15 years ago, to allow those sweet gums to survive? And there are those kinds of mysteries on the landscape wherever you look.
You know, and before Angel, you were pointing out the expressway and all the development and stuff like that, and I just can't help but think about the Richmond Parkway, Gretta Moulton, and the battle to save High Rock when I see that so close to this awesome park.
Absolutely, and this park is the point in space and time where the Richmond Parkway, it makes most sense to talk about it, because right before where we started this Facebook Live today is right where the proposed Richmond Parkway was being built. So maybe people aren't really super aware of the fact that there already was an overpass, I think right past the Clove Road exit of the highway, that was abandoned for years. I know it was abandoned when I was in high school, and that was what was going to be the Richmond Parkway, and that would have cut right through this park. There are even parts of this park where if you're investigating a little bit more, you'll find staged materials like guardrails and things like that. I think there's even some large machinery that is left behind from when that project was maybe or maybe not going to happen. And so that was pretty much in the mid to late 60s, and even like went over into the 70s because, like you said earlier, I think Deere Park, not called Deere Park at the time, was consolidated into New York City Parkland in 1973. So that's kind of the time when we knew that the parkway idea, which was Robert Moses's idea, was dead in the water. It was not going to happen. And that was greatly due to the very active grassroots campaign from local citizens and organizations and different politicians and governmental groups that were really put into effect by a handful of really, really passionate people, namely Mrs. Gretta Moulton, who is credited with saving High Rock Park from development a little bit before the Richmond Parkway, but then also into the Richmond Parkway era. But that was one of the first activist moments to start saving all of these 2,800 acres of the Greenbelt. It had to start somewhere, and that's right where it was. So once High Rock was saved and designated as New York City Parkland, then it was easy enough to kind of say, oh, well, how about that parcel next door? We should get that too. And we should preserve it for all of time. And on and on and on until here we are in the middle of Staten Island with encroaching development all around us still. And knowing that this site will be forever wild as designated by the city of New York. And we're so thankful for every single person who came before us to make it so that we can walk on these trails and the woodpeckers can continue to make noise in our Facebook Live. It's really amazing. Every place has history, and that's why these Scenic Perspectives, we try to dig into kind of the social history of the area in addition to the natural history.
So I just want to point out that as we're moving into this beautiful weather, and I think it's supposed to be something like 90 or 80 degrees today, not quite 90 degrees, thank goodness, but we can see that this beautiful native vine, sometimes ground cover, sometimes a tree, is growing here. And although poison ivy is something that affects a certain percentage of human beings, it's also really important because it is a native plant species. It provides food, it provides pollen, it provides ground cover to the different insects, invertebrates, and vertebrates that call the Greenbelt home. But as hikers and land users, again, just a heads up that it's that time of year where you're going to be seeing it more abundantly.
And this time of year, I'm happy that you pointed that out, because this time of year, as the leaves are just starting to emerge, they tend to be that bright red and they're shiny. So if you see something bright red, then you can remember for maybe the next time you come out in a month when they're not bright red anymore, but you may remember that there was a big growth of poison ivy in this area and you're going to be careful.
And so before Deborah Beth did mention the woodpecker as you were talking, and so did Susan. And it was awesome that you were talking about Forever Wild, and we hear this construction and we hear this commotion being made by humans, but simultaneously the woodpecker is sharing its presence and saying, I can be louder than you. And it just shows the resiliency of nature and why, like you said before, Forever Wild parks are super important.
We should definitely point out another native species, because native species are unfortunately becoming less and less prolific on Staten Island. But we're looking at the beautiful low to the ground speckled leaves of the Trout Lily plant, which after a little while blossoms a really beautiful lily-like flower. It's much smaller and kind of has thinner leaves, but they curl around and it's really so beautiful. And I've noticed that they often grow near the roots of trees in moist areas. So that's another way to kind of read your forested landscape and see that certain species do better in certain areas, and certain species you'll never find in other areas because they're just not adapted for that. Do you see that grackle? Oh, it just went under the little footbridge. Grackles are really cool, shiny birds. I think that they're corvids. I think they're members of the family that is crows and such. They have like black with oil slick colors on them, almost like a peacock. When the light hits them just right, it's really beautiful. And sometimes in summer and autumn, they'll come together and make huge groups of murmurations. They make lots of noise. They're pretty awesome birds. I see next to that grackle a nice native fern growing. That's great. So we have the native ferns, we have the trout lilies and skunk cabbages and poison ivy, all native species in this area, fighting for space. And here's this old fallen tree. I wonder if I stood here, how many rings I could count. I'd say there's probably about 100 or more there.
So as we were approaching here, someone commented on these steps, and we can see that, you know, this trail, which trail treads are generally supposed to be 3 feet in width. You can see this whole area has kind of just been eroded out by both water and foot traffic. You can see, like, to Angel's right, that folks are coming down this hill, whether hiking on, whether biking on, either way, because these old check dams are kind of steep. They're not super accessible to everybody, but they are upholding some sediment and some earth to try to assist in the ongoing erosion that's heading down here. But again, it's definitely an area that needs some attention. And this Sunday, the Greenbelt Education Department will be kicking off our Greenbelt Conservation Corps initiative by actually working on some high priority trail projects around the Greenbelt. So this Sunday, we're going to be working on a section of the Red Trail, much needed reroute. And hopefully in the future, we can get some volunteers up here to work on this area. Again, if you're interested in volunteering and becoming a member of the Greenbelt Conservation Corps, you can contact us via social media, our email addresses, and our website, sigreenbelt.org.
It's very interesting that that is a problem there, because we're seeing right now, this is maybe the worst area where erosion from flowing water has really caused some issues here. And that can happen because of changes in the environment kind of uphill. So if it rains, water takes its kind of easiest way downhill. But if something changes uphill, like maybe a new house is built or a whole neighborhood is built, then that's going to start to change the path that the water is going to take. And so we can see that trees that were happy here for quite a while are in jeopardy of falling over with all of their roots exposed, because this is a newer problem. So we can see the difference between the kind of landscape that the glacier carved into the hills and the kind of newer erosions that are occurring because of human impact things of varying degrees. Can you see that woodpecker?
He or she...
They're experts at just hiding on the other side of the tree so that you can't see them.
Oh.
So as we are getting closer and closer to the loud sounds of construction with this new building, we are also getting closer and closer to the street, where we'll be able to show you how you enter from the safest place. This is kind of beautiful. We have this big old American beech tree that, if you look up, has lost the whole top half of its body, with just a little bit on the left still growing. But then what we see right next door is the next generation of baby beech coming up, and promising that there will be tomorrow, even when you lose half of your tree body. It's amazing.
I feel like beech as a species have been our companions on all of these virtual hikes, because whether we were doing Scenic Perspectives Bloodroot or William T. Davis or any of the other parks within the Greenbelt, all fall, winter, and spring, they've been our constant companion with their leaves out, whether brown this winter or green now.
Absolutely.
So Susan Marie, you asked, is it the Greenbelt Conservancy? So the Greenbelt Conservancy works in partnership with New York City Parks in order to maintain, sustain, and enhance our 2,800 acres of Greenbelt Parkland. Angel and myself are New York City Parks environmental educators working with the Greenbelt Conservancy to deliver these programs. And so our Greenbelt Conservation Corps initiative is a program designed partnering New York City Parks and the Greenbelt Conservancy to give new volunteer opportunities for folks to come back and to help us maintain and build these 35 miles of hiking trails. And really this came about because over the past year and a half, all of our communities have been struggling with the global pandemic. And we've once again learned that public spaces, outdoor parklands, natural areas are quite more than a luxury. They're a necessity for all of us. And they've become a haven and a safe space for many, many people. And so in order to continue to offer community members near and far this awesome place, we need to all come together and help to maintain and enhance it so that the generations to come can experience this wonderful place just as we are today on this virtual hike.
That was a crow. You can see up from this bridge one of the best tracking substrates on the planet, which is mud, which is not too wet or too dry, but you can see the evidence of all of the creatures that have come through this area in the past. I'd say we haven't had rain in a little while, so I'd say the past 5 days or so. Lots of deer, some dogs, for sure. But I always like to stop and look when there's a little bit of a stream. Is that a really large carpenter bee?
Moving real quick. I would guess so. Or it could be a bumblebee. It looks a little fuzzier than a... All right, I won't make you all dizzy at home trying to chase the bumblebee around. Thank you for your ongoing patience.
So now we can see how close we are to Victory Blvd. We're just on the very other side of the parking lot. And this park is kind of invisible to a lot of people because as you drive, the most that you'd really see it is if you're driving to the intersection of Toad Hill and Ocean Terrace. But at that point, it's easy not to realize that you're even looking at the Greenbelt, but that it's just woods in a nice neighborhood. And when I was here on this past Thanksgiving with my family going on a hike, I was like, I wonder if we'll see a turkey today. Because as we all know, turkeys are able to be seen more and more on Staten Island. And we walked right inside here and there was a gaggle of like 15 to 20 turkeys just walking around. It was so perfect, so amazing. No turkeys today, but I think we heard one yesterday, right?
We did when we were scouting this area. We heard the gobble gobble.
We've made it to the trailblazers that still need some work, but this upside down triangle indicates that this is the end of the trail. But you don't have to be too sad about it because you can come to this side of the tree and see that this right side up triangle is the beginning of the trail. So it really just depends on where you're standing and how long your day is to see whether you're going or coming. And here are some really great pictures and information about the different animals and plants that you might see here. I would love to see a screech owl here. Sorry. And then we can just see this sign that welcomes everyone and lets you know about the basic rules in all New York City parks. And this is always the sign that you're looking for if you are venturing out to a trail within the Greenbelt.
Awesome. Thank you, Angel. And thank you all at home for joining us for another Greenbelt at Home virtual program, Scenic Perspectives. If you are interested in more virtual or in-person content regarding the Greenbelt, our trails, and all the amazing natural areas that can be found here, you can visit us at sigreenbelt.org, which has our events calendar. We have social media platforms like you're on today with the Greenbelt Conservancy and the Greenbelt Environmental Education Facebook pages, along with our YouTube channel, the Staten Island Greenbelt. And I saw a bunch of questions asking about volunteer opportunities, so feel free to private message the Greenbelt Conservancy's Facebook page because you're already here, and we'll get back to you about what's going on this weekend and upcoming volunteer opportunities. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day and happy trails.